Twitter and Instagram representatives have been giving evidence on online racism to the Home Affairs Committee today as the FA, the PFA and Kick It Out look to combat the growing issue of online abuse on those social media platforms. Lianne, Sanderson, Anton Ferdinand and Marvin Sordell all gave personal accounts of how abuse affects them and professional footballers. In a study conducted in July, research found that 44% of players received abuse on their Twitter accounts, while unmoderated racist online abuse increased by 48% in the second half of last season. Targeted abuse peaked in May 2021, shortly after a 4-day football-wide social media boycott was held to draw further attention to online hate.
Know there's going to be a lot of abuse that comes my way. I think it did get better, you know, when we had the, when everybody kind of boycotted for a little while, you know, for the 3 days over the weekend they did it. I joined that boycott because I'm all for like coming together as opposed to dividing and conquering. I think it's better to all come together, but then, you know, at the end of the day, people are not born racist, you know, it's learnt behaviour, and I think the problem that I have is that everybody can make these fake accounts time and time again, you know, they can get reported and nothing's really done about it by the companies. So it's one of those things people say to me, well, why don't you just come off of social media altogether? But I don't feel like I should have to do that in order to make change, because I've done that before, it hasn't quite worked. And I just don't fully feel like there's the support out there that understands what it's like to walk a day in the life of somebody like myself or Anton or many other professional footballers, or not only professional footballers, anybody in the public eye. And it's not a nice feeling, and I think it's not a nice feeling for my family, it's not a nice feeling for everybody around me. So it certainly makes me feel sad, but there's almost like you feel helpless in knowing what to do going forward.
Now, in July, it was revealed that only 56% of racially abusive posts identified throughout the season have been removed, with some posts have actually remained live for months and in some cases the full duration of the season. Well, Ferdinand said that Twitter and Instagram simply don't do enough to prioritise and pinpoint the abuse.
Always the same response. You either nothing happens or it's a generic message that says they haven't breached Twitter rules, which is, for me, a disgrace that it doesn't breach the rules, but when something's tweeted about what's going on in the world today, it's automatically pinpointed and dealt with. But when it's someone being racially abused or any type of discrimination, there's all of a sudden it's allowed, and I don't quite understand that.
Impacted me to the point where, you know, it was one of the contributing factors for me walking away from the game. At 28, I retired. So, you know, it had a big enough impact on me to decide to do that. And, you know, I speak to a lot of players currently within the game. I speak to young people who are, you know, trying to get into the game, their parents as well. And there is very much an unease around wanting to kind of go into the firing line almost. And that happens with the success that you have as a football player. We can't just wait and be reactive until something tragic happens, because at some point that may be the case, and we shouldn't have to wait and continue down this path and continue just talking without actually making any action, because we currently don't see racism as a serious issue. Being very frank, racism isn't seen as a serious issue. If it was, we wouldn't be having this conversation every few months, every year, every decade, because we seem to be doing so. I've spoken about this, I can't even tell you how many times, even just in the 2 years since I've retired, let alone across the period of my career, my involvement within football.
Well, discussions have just come to a conclusion. These were the opening responses from Instagram and Twitter representatives.
We've been able to assess when we see a certain number of emojis brought together, they are predominantly being used to abuse. And so what we've been able to do is learn from that experience, put that string of certain strings of emojis, I won't go into which they are because this can be a very adversarial space, is to build and put them into what's called our offensive common filter technology, so they will be found and removed from the system.
So why are they still up today?
Sorry, excuse me. Sorry.
Why are they still up today?
So they shouldn't be up, and if things are there, you see them, please do continue to report them to us. our systems are in place, we have had a very, very significant increase in being able to proactively detect and remove this kind of content. In our transparency report, our last transparency report, it's gone up to 95% of this kind of bullying and harassment and hate speech content is proactively identified and removed.
I think the first thing I'd say is that the burden shouldn't be on victims of abuse to report those tweets to us. And actually, from working with the football community over the past few years, we've got to a place where by the end of last season, about 95% of the abusive tweets we were taking down, we were detecting using machine learning. Beyond that, we have partnerships in place with the clubs, the FA, the Premier League and others, so that if anything doesn't get detected by our machine learning, they're able to report it directly to our enforcement teams and we can take it down very quickly. But our overarching approach is such that the burden doesn't fall on the victim. And I think for too long, one of the problems has been looking at these issues solely through the lens of content moderation. How can we quickly find and remove these abusive tweets rather than looking at the fundamentals of platforms like Twitter in the first place? How can you stop it being possible for the tweet from person A to be sent to person B or be seen by person B? I'm sure that's something we'll get into in this session, but I think Marvin hit the nail on the head when he said the challenge is the ease of which people can contact footballers, and that's where we're starting to focus a lot of our work.